celebrating our 75th anniversary in the consumer line. These are just some of the products that really put us ahead of the game in the last 20, 30 years, just to showcase for you that we do understand build quality, attention to detail. This here is a monoblock amplifier from the early 80s from our exclusive line, which is, as the name implies, exclusive to the Japanese market. This is a $40,000 monoblock amp. As you can see here, just ridiculous attention to detail, very, very high quality build. Very, very high-end turntable, which even by today's standards, if you go online, research the P3A, many people think that it's still, by today's standards, the best turntable made. Very, very high-quality speaker designs. In fact, Pioneer, even today, we have about 60% of the market share in speaker driver manufacturing for a lot of brands out there, not just the Pioneer brand. So brand A, B, and C would submit to us their designs for speaker driver, and because of our incredible heritage in research and development for speaker materials, we're able to fulfill just about any order that anybody can come up with out there. We were the first to do diamond tweeters, the first to do carbon ceramic hybrids, and so on. So we do have quite a lot of background in speaker design. I love showing this picture here. This is our old flagship Blu-ray player. I like to show it because, unlike a lot of the other competitors out there, we actually do put things inside of our products. And I say that because at this particular time there was another brand out there that had a Blu-ray player at the same $2,500 price point that when we opened it up, there was nothing but a $200 Funai Blu-ray driver board and reader inside. So we actually do dedicate a lot of groundbreaking from the floor up kind of technologies into our products. This is one of the big recording rooms at Air Studios in London, England. These are the Grammy and Oscar-winning engineering artists who have done most of the soundtracks for just about any movie or CD or record or tape you can think of over the last 40 years. In the back, you can see our flagship Reference 1 speakers at $85,000 a pair. Those are their Master Mix go-to speakers, and I'll touch on Air Studios in more detail later on. Another big high-end preamp from our TAD division. So just again to let you see that we do understand build quality. We're not new kids on the block. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this presentation here. New features that are really going to be pretty revolutionary and groundbreaking. For better or for worse, and we can argue this till we're blue in the face, 99% of our entertainment needs and wants come from these small portable devices, whether it's a phone or a tablet. This is where we're getting our music, our streaming sources, Pandora, Rhapsody, Netflix, YouTube, our music, our photos, our videos are coming from these portable devices. Now, Pioneer has always been extremely strong in the Apple market. We were the first to be iPhone certified, iPod certified, iPad certified. In fact, going back even much further, we provided the first super drives for the first Mac computers on the market. So we've always been very, very well known and appreciated in the Apple community for giving Apple-centric users the same kind of streamlined ease of use that you would expect from an Apple product and transferring that over into a Pioneer product. So when you connect an Apple device to a Pioneer receiver, you get that same immediate response, ease of use. It just works like it says on the Apple website. But of course, with the Android market becoming so huge now, we want to apply that same kind of dedication to control and accessibility of all these different apps that are on these devices to the Android market as well, not just the Apple market out there too. Now, AirPlay, it's amazing how many people I talk to that don't know what AirPlay is. This has got to be one of the single worst marketed technologies in the industry today. I think the great people at Apple just assume that if you're an Apple user, you're going to automatically understand what this is. Well, unfortunately, not everybody is an Apple user. So when it comes to third-party companies like Pioneer, Denon, or Onkyo, or Yamaha, or whoever that is incorporating an Apple technology like AirPlay into it, there can be a learning curve there. And for those of you that aren't familiar with AirPlay, don't be embarrassed. It's not a big deal. All it is really is the ability for an Apple device like an iPod or an iPhone or an iPad to wirelessly send the music that's on it, whether it's a music file that you've imported over to that device or whether it's something from Pandora Radio. you can transmit that music over your home wireless network through a wireless router and to an AirPlay compliant device like one of our Pioneer or our Elite receivers, and get that audio back into your home theater environment. So you're not just listening on little headphones or a little Bluetooth speaker. Suddenly you've got this great music that you want to enjoy over your wireless network on your speakers in your home theater environment. And one of the big advantages to AirPlay, of course, is that it's not Bluetooth. Bluetooth is a very limited bandwidth technology, not really originally designed for audio. AirPlay is designed for much higher resolution, better quality sound, and it has a much greater range, obviously, than, say, a Bluetooth device is. So that's for the Apple market. Well, what about the Android market? Pioneer has an exclusive relationship for a year with HTC. HTC is a really, really big name in the Android industry. They are one of the leading cell phone manufacturers, not just for Android, but for Windows phones as well. And they have, in the consumer market, they are second only to Apple for customer satisfaction. That's a huge feather in their cap. In fact, they recently just signed a licensing agreement with Apple to share similar technologies back and forth. So all those big lawsuits that you may have been reading about out there between Apple and HTC, those don't exist anymore. They're all one big happy family sending money back and forth. So it all works out to everybody's advantage. So HTC Connect is literally AirPlay for an Android device. In this case, an HTC branded phone, one of their newer models. All the different providers out there are now selling them. So depending on which carrier you've got, it could be the HTC One, the HTC One X, and so on. So you really have to look between the different carriers to see which of the newer HTC phones the models are that they have. And this is really cool because just like with an Apple device, you just press a few buttons and it just works. This HTC Connect software is built in to these new HTC phones. You don't have to download an app. You don't have to configure it. All you do is go to your music player and say, this is the song I want to listen to on my Pioneer Elite receiver in my home theater system on my big reference floor standing speakers, and that's the receiver, that's the audio device I want to send it to. So it's just like AirPlay. It's really, really cool. It's very, very easy to use. There's really no learning curve at all involved. And just like with AirPlay, you'll get the on-screen album art, the metadata, the artist information, just like you would see with an AirPlay device if you had your TV screen turned on. And before I actually go any further, just so everybody is aware of this, we haven't officially announced this, and I really shouldn't be telling you this, but frankly, I don't really care what corporate has to say about this. We have the same HTC Connect software already built into the new Elite BDP62 Blu-ray player, which I'll show you towards the end of this presentation if we have time. And what that will allow you to do is wirelessly transmit high-definition video and high-resolution photos from your HTC phone. That's really cool. So you can actually have an HTC phone with a high-resolution camera on it, shoot a 1080p video of your kids at a soccer game or at a concert or what have you, or take your photos of your dog and immediately be able to send those wirelessly over your home network to one of our Blu-ray players and listen to and watch that content in high definition with up to 7.1 channels of audio support on your home theater system. And again, that's with our BDP62 Blu-ray player. So here we're looking at, on this particular slide, just audio only. But on the Blu-ray player, you'll look at resolution photos as well. So that's very, very cool new technology that we've got on board with HTC. Now, in the top right corner of some of these slides, you'll notice that I might have here, for example, it says Elite All Models. That means that all of the Elite receivers, regardless of the price point, have this feature built into them. Sometimes you'll see a model number up there with a little arrow pointing to the right, and that will indicate that from this model on up, this feature will live and play. So here, for example, all of the Elite models have HDMI standby through. This is something that we've had for a couple of generations now, but hey, it didn't work. And the simple reason it didn't work was, well, what is it really all about to begin with? The idea behind HDMI pass-through and standby was that if you wanted to catch the news, catch the weather report off your cable or your satellite box before you jumped in your car and went to work that day, you didn't want to have to turn on your whole system and blast sound through all of your 7.1 or 9.1 speakers. You just wanted to be able to watch it on TV and listen to the audio through the TV speakers. Well, the reason this didn't work in the past, even though it was a great idea, is that it required CEC, which is the Consumer Electronics Control Protocol. And last time I looked, there was no CEC built into any satellite or cable boxes. So if you turned your satellite or cable box on, the receiver, which was in the standby mode, didn't do anything because it didn't see the signal. There was no CEC in it. So it wouldn't send that audio and video directly to your TV. Well, we've worked with the HDMI group on this issue, and they have resolved this with us and allowed us to bypass CEC for this feature. So your receiver can remain in the standby mode. You don't need to turn on your entire home theater system just to catch the news. Turn on your cable box, your satellite box, any HDMI device, as a matter of fact, and it will send that audio and video through to your TV. As you can see here, it's completely configurable. You can have it set to go to a specific input every time you do this, or you can use the input selection on the remote control or the knob on the front of the receiver to change inputs to whatever input you want to use. So a pretty cool feature, and it does work. From the VSX60 on up, this is about the $800, $850 price point, we're looking at Auto Phase Control Plus. Now, we've been doing auto phase for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 generations now, and a lot of other brands out there do something similar to this as well too, but what differentiates Pioneer from everybody else is that we'll do it for all of the speakers, not just your main left and right. And literally what this will do for you is this will remove that delay that always occurs whenever you have multiple electronics in a chain. So you've got your source playback device, you've got the processors and the receivers, and you even have the electronic crossovers in the speakers. And all these multiple devices in the audio chain end up adding a delay between your high frequencies and your low frequencies. Obviously, high frequencies travel much faster than low frequencies, so by the time all this sound gets to your speaker and the speaker starts to emit this sound, at your listening position you'll hear a noticeable, even though it's extremely short, your brain picks up on it, will hear a noticeable delay between the highs and the low frequencies. So it doesn't sound like a natural, realistic listening environment. And we've developed a process going back again 4 or 5 generations that will do this for not just your main left and right as the other brands do, but also for all the speakers in your surround sound system to retime those high and low frequencies to arrive at your listening position at the same time to make it sound much more natural, like you're really right there with the performance. Like a lot of features that are built in our receivers, the default mode for this is off. It's your system, do what you want with it, we don't care. But if you do want to try to expand upon the listening experience and make it sound more natural and more realistic, I certainly urge you to try these out for yourselves, get your customer interested in these. They really can make a world of difference depending on what you're listening to. Now, all of the SC model Elite receivers, and SC being the Class D receivers, have a whole plethora of advanced audio and video processing built in. Even though technically we don't make flat panel TVs anymore, and I can hear you all muttering amongst yourselves, even though we don't make those TVs anymore, we still have those same video engineers with us, and they're responsible for programming the Anchor Bay or the Marvell QDO processors built into our receivers. They're not coming programmed from those manufacturers. We are programming themselves to say, how do we want to handle that incoming audio and video information? So we do provide you with a lot of different ways of fine-tuning and improving in a lot of cases, not just how poor source material can look, but how an older video display, whether it's a front projector or a rear projection or a flat panel TV, how much better they can perform if they're given a little bit of tweaking behind the scenes. Now, all of these are per input exclusive. They're not global, so if you change it on the Blu-ray input, for example, it's not going to change what it looks like on the cable input. It's going to be exclusive just to that particular input. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in how you can control and address various issues that could occur with your different audio and your video sources. Preamp mode from the SC61 on up. This is about the $1,100 price point, I believe. Everywhere I go, people are always asking, when are we going to do separates again? Guys, I would love to do separates again, but we are so recently back in the black that our shareholders literally will not let us take any unnecessary risks. That being said, we still give people the option to use our receivers as a very high-end preamp. I've actually done a couple of shows recently where I've had people come up to me and say, you know, this is great because I do have an older stack of Adcom or even Carver amps, take your pick, brand A, B, or C. Don't want to get rid of them, love the way they sound, they're great performing amps. Now I can bring my system into the 21st century. I'll have all of my HDMI connectivity, my internet radio, my IP control, and so on. I can bypass the internal amps on these SC receivers and run any configuration of amps, as you can see here, that you choose. So a very, very flexible system in our SC receivers. From the SC65 on up, and this is I think around the $1,500–1,600 price point. Tom will have to clue us in on that later on. Just like in the Apple connectivity world, which we provide a cable to connect to Apple iPhones, iPods, and iPads, so you can get audio from those onto your receiver. We are including an MHL cable from the SC65 on up. And what this is HDMI on one end, and it looks like a little micro USB connector on the other, which you would use to charge most Android devices. And what this will allow you to do is not just charge the device, obviously, but also to take audio, high-resolution video, high-resolution photos off of that Android device and watch them on your TV, listen to them through your speakers. What's really cool about this too is, depending on the model phone, like say a Samsung Galaxy S2 for example, if I plug that in with the MHL cable, I can use the receiver's remote control to access any app that's on that phone. And on my TV screen, I will see the phone's display. If I turn the phone into the landscape mode, the little gyroscope inside the phone will flip the picture so that it fills my entire TV screen. And then I can use the remote control to go to YouTube, I can go to my photo gallery, I can go surf the internet, I can go to email. Anything that's on that phone I can access. So it's opening up all sorts of opportunities for me using MHL with an Android device. But I do specify, I stress that you'll need to check with the phone to make sure it is MHL compliant. Most Android phones made in the last 1.5 to 2 years are probably MHL compliant. Everything being made today now that's hitting the stores is MHL compliant. So that's not so much of an issue. But just to be on the safe side, check, see if they're MHL compliant with an older generation phone. I do know that Samsung pulled a fast one on everybody with their new Galaxy S3 phone. They changed the pin configuration, so you need to buy an adapter from Samsung in order to make it MHL compliant. I guess they wanted to get a few more bucks from you, so they're going to charge you about $40 to $50 for that adapter. But in any case, we're going to give you this MHL cable for free with the receivers. Again, from the SC65 on up, 4K, 2K pass-through. Now note that I say pass-through, not scaling. Everybody else in the industry, with the exception of Sony that just started shipping their new receivers, will scale low-resolution sources up to 4K, 2K. We will actually allow any native 4K, 2K signal to go through untouched. Pioneer's kind of like doctors. We don't want to hurt the patient if at all necessary. So we're not going to add any unnecessary processing to the video signal. We don't want to introduce the chance of any noise or artifacts getting into that signal. So in the future, whatever 4K, 2K happens to be on, whether it's a streaming source or an optical disc or hard drive, we will allow that signal to go through to your next generation 4K, 2K TV. DTS Neo X, woohoo, another surround sound format nobody's going to use. We've got it. It's built in from the SC65 on up. So again, just like any of those other surround sound formats in the past, lots of different ways of configuring your audio to give you different kinds of surround sound fields, different types of effects based upon the content that you're watching, whether it's movies or music or game, television shows. So as you can see here, a little bit of different arrangement of speakers, height speakers, wide, ambiance type speakers as well. Now we have two flagship receivers, the SC67 and the 68. Starting with the 67, we allow DSD file playback. Now DSD is direct stream digital. It's a Sony development from way back in the day of DVD audio and SACD. It is literally a 1-bit audio file format. The file extension, if you care, is .dff. And there are a number of online websites such as HD Tracks or 2LNO, which is a Norwegian place of all places out there, that are starting to offer a lot of their artist recordings in the DSD file format. I'm not going to argue with anybody about what sounds better, a FLAC file in PCM or a 1-bit DSD file format. It doesn't matter, because that's part of the fun of this business, is we get paid to play with toys, and your customer gets to enjoy the results of that, and it gives them extra flexibility in being able to listen to almost any kind of file format that they want, that they have in their library. And if you qualify your customers, you find out from them that yes, they do have a lot of music on their hard drives that they've downloaded from the internet or that they've ripped themselves. Chances are this person's probably a music junkie. They're an audiophile, and this is just another gift to them, literally. This is something that nobody else is doing. There are a number of high-end websites out there reviewing nothing but audio streaming network USB DACs for processing of high-resolution audio files. And even Home Theater Magazine recently did a review of the SC68, and the reviewer just could not stop going on about how cool it was that Pioneer was the only company out there supporting SACD quality audio files. And the flagship, the SC68, has an asynchronous USB DAC on the back of it as well. This is to help reduce and in a lot of cases eliminate digital jitter from digital audio sources, whether it's a CD or a Blu-ray movie or an MP3 file. Digital jitter goes all the way back to the golden years of digital audio. When it was first developed, they knew about it. Jitter was going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. Anytime you have a source device like your player and your sync device like your receiver or your preamp, you've got quartz clocks in those devices to synchronize the decoding and the processing of that information. And they could be $1 trillion a piece, but because they're physically separate, they can never be perfectly synchronized with one another. So you're going to end up with bits literally being lost between the playback and going over that digital connection to the processor that's going to send that information out to your speakers. And as great as that digital audio sounded to you when you first listened to it, it can actually sound a heck of a lot better when you have something like an asynchronous USB DAC thrown in. This will allow music coming off of a computer, in this case you can see here a laptop, connected to the back of the receiver with a USB cable, to take control away from the clock in the PC and put it solely in the receiver. So all of these bits of information that were being lost before are suddenly back in the audio stream. And you suddenly get a wider soundstage, tighter bass, more defined vocals. It can really make an amazing difference in what you're listening to. This is something, incidentally, that's at cost a $500 part. We have the same asynchronous USB DAC in the SC68 is also in our N50 network streamer box, which some of you might be carrying already. That literally jacked the price up of this receiver by about $600. Normally, it was originally when we were first planning this receiver, we were looking at about the $1,800 to $2,000 price point range, and it's retailing at $2,500 now. So this is a very, very high quality part on board. Audiostreams.com gave this in the N50 a glowing review compared to DACs that are $4,000 and $5,000. So here's Class D amplification. This has so much going for it. We've been working on this for about 12 years now. It's been in our product line for about 5 of those generations. We were not the first to do Class D in a consumer audio product, but we have been consistently getting outstanding reviews from around the world on an amplifier technology that previously was really not known for being an audiophile reproduction process. Class D has really been known for being very cold, not very dynamic, not having the warmth and openness of, say, a great solid state or even a tube amp. But again, we've been working for quite a long time in refining this. And why Class D? Why not stick with the tried and true A and AB amplification designs? Well, here's why. We do have, incidentally, 5 new models. Before we just had 2 in the top line. Now we've got a total of 5. So the price points are starting to drop down a bit. So you're looking at about $1,100 on up to the $2,500 price point. So we've got 3 7-channel and 2 9-channel amps. But again, as I asked before, why Class D? Well, Class D is very, very high power output capable. That is a Class D board on the bottom right of the screen, by the way, too. Not very exciting to look at. Looks like a little bunch of high-rise office buildings. But really, there are so many advantages. If you just look at that, you can already see one of the biggest advantages to Class D is that it takes up very little space in the chassis. You can actually build out a lot more in your receiver in the audio and video processing input and output connections than you would with a traditional AB amp. With an AB amp, for this particular board, we're looking at 9 channels of amplification. You would need extremely big, beefy toroidal amplifiers on board there. Those are going to take up space. Those are going to generate a lot of noise. Those are going to require extra shielding for RF and EMI interference from the rest of the electronics on board. Class D behaves very, very nicely while still performing at extremely high levels, as we'll see as we go on. Very little energy wasted as heat. Class D is, on our designs, anywhere from about 90 to 95% efficient, meaning 90 to 95% of what's coming out of the electrical outlet in your wall is being turned into sound that you can hear. It's not being wasted as heat, unlike the best AB amps on a good day, if you're lucky, are 40% efficient. We've really taken A and AB amplification as far as they can go, certainly at these price points, without getting into the ridiculous prices to give you minimal improvements in sound. 4-ohm stable. We were actually 4-ohm stable last year, but we didn't have it in print. This time you've got it in print, so sir, ma'am, knock yourselves out, hook up your Martin Logans, hook up your Magnapans, it doesn't matter. These are very, very efficient designs. And you don't need to do any kind of switching on the amplifier either to handle different ohm loads. It will switch automatically depending on what it senses at the other end. In the past, you had to press a few buttons in a secret combination on the front panel of the receiver to switch between 6 and 8 ohms, for example. Now, this will do 4, 6, 8. Doesn't matter. I'll do it for you on the fly. Audiophile sound, THX certification, excuse me, and Air Studio certified. THX certification, we're working with THX on reinventing the THX story to help you and the rest of us explain to consumers why this is not just a fancy logo silk screened onto the front of the receiver. What does it mean? Why is it important? I think we all are pretty familiar with the THX story, but it's a long, drawn-out story. We need to shorten that down and figure out how to make it work a little bit better. If any of you can come up with a great, quick, dirty way of explaining THX, please let me know. I'll take credit for it, and we'll move on from there. Air Studio certified, we'll touch on that, why that's so important with Pioneer. Highly configurable, up to 10 different amplifier configurations. So there is just, I mean, you can just imagine all the different kinds of speaker configurations you can do with these. This is probably the single most important slide in the entire presentation. I'll make this available to Tom, and he can disseminate it amongst the rest of you to use as you like. Home Theater magazine came up with this last year. They got sick and tired of all these different manufacturers saying, hey, we can do this amount of power at this ohm level consistently with this many channels driven. They wanted to see what all these different brands could do in the real world, under real world environments. So they took all these different brands, Elite, Integra, Yamaha, Denon, Marantz, Sony, the Pioneer brand, and the Onkyo brand, and all similar power specifications. In other words, they were all claiming to run anywhere from 110 to 140 watts per channel at 8 ohms consistently. So they ran their tests at 8 ohms, 5 channels driven, 7 channels driven, depending on the capability of that particular receiver from last year's lineup, and gave it a 1% THD limit. Now, 1% THD may sound like a lot compared to other people saying, oh, I've got 0.05 or I've got 0.003. 1% is really the threshold where you would actually start to hear a difference. Anything below 1%, 1% below, you really can't hear it. It just is a way to measure it and put everybody on the same playing field. So this is very interesting. If you look at this, the Elite SC57, last year's Class D flagship receiver from Pioneer, claimed about 140 watts per channel on a good day on paper. In real world, it was doing about 126, 127 watts per channel, 7 channels driven at 8 ohms, 1% THD. No surprise, the Integra is almost neck and neck in terms of power output. Integra makes some fantastically robust amplifiers. However, being an AB amp, it is insanely hot. I've gone dealer by dealer by dealer around the country in the last year and a half, 2 years, and so many of them have been telling me, we love Integra. From a custom integration standpoint, it does what we want it to do. It's fantastic. We get great support from Integra. However, in the actual installations, we're running into constant issues of overheating. Ventilation fans will break down as they always do. The units themselves will just get simply too hot to operate and they'll shut down. In fact, if you look at the bottom part of this graph in the purpley violet color, Denon's flagship from last year, $1,000 more than the Elite SC57, claiming 140 watts per channel, managing barely 35, 36 watts per channel. Then it went into thermal protection, shut down, could not be restarted, had to be sent back to the factory for repairs. We didn't make this slide. Somebody else made the slide. Home Theater Magazine came up with this. Again, it's out there for you to use. Please do so. The real reason behind this, these dramatic decreases in power output versus what's claimed, is, as we probably know, A and AB amplifiers, the more you throw at them in terms of the number of channels of speakers being driven and the amount of power those speakers demand depending on how efficient they are, the quicker that amplifier is going to collapse. The hotter it's going to get. The hotter it gets, the less efficient it becomes. So you can really see here in a very graphic way just how less efficient an AB amp can be, including our own. You look at the VSX 1021, and that was, I think, a 90 watt per channel receiver last year, and that's barely putting out, I don't know, 53, 54 watts per channel at that point. We did a test with, I think it was Transformers 2 on Blu-ray, where we ran our first generation Class D amps by Ice Power against Den's flagship. We ran it for about 2.5 hours to see how much power was being consumed. And we're looking about here 271 watt hours versus 365 on the Denon. But when we went to the new Class D3, we saw a whopping 25% reduction over the previous generation of Class D. So you can see we're continually improving upon this power design. But pretty pictures tell a story, don't they? So let's look at pretty pictures. Here is thermographs of the heat being generated by the power supplies of Class D versus A and AB, or I should say the other two are AB amps as well. So wow, almost 70 degrees C on the Denon, almost 68 on the Onkyo Integra. That's ridiculously hot. Imagine that kind of temperature inside of a closed cabinet environment. CEDIA last year, we ran this little demo area. We had one of our own AB receivers hooked up next to a Class D receiver. We could not, of course, have 14 speakers set up blasting sound at 0 dB THX reference levels at a trade show, because it would make me more deaf than I already am, and it would really piss off all the other dealers in the area in that part of the hall. So we had 100 watt per channel custom-made resistor banks hooked up to each receiver to simulate a speaker load. And the idea behind this demonstration was not to show how great the sound was, but actually to show how efficient the power differences were in consumption between an AB and a Class D. So we had these little power meters hooked up, and what we could see here with a Metallica Blu-ray concert disc playing for consistent levels of noise, on the VSX 52 we saw an average of about 700 to 800 watts being pulled off of the AC, whereas on the SC57 we saw anywhere from 340 to about 400 watts of power. So really big difference in savings. The first 6 hours of that show, I happened to be running both receivers at 0 dB, and I wasn't thinking. Remember how I said that these were 100 watt per channel resistors that were hooked up? After the first 6 hours, I started smelling something funny, and it was the resistor bank on the left with the Class D receiver. It was outputting way more power than the 100 watt resistors could handle. So the 1/4-inch thick plexiglass standoff to protect people from touching hot objects had actually melted and had bonded to the heat sinks and was causing this amazing smell. The resistors for the VSX52, on the other hand, were cool because, again, the AB amp is not as efficient, so it was not outputting more power than the resistors could handle. So this is another slide that I really enjoy showing. SD65 on up, again, lots of different things that you can do with these amplifiers, lots of different power going on here. Certified performance, again, the THX really want to be able to share with the end user the obsession that Pioneer has with the ability to recreate in just about any home theater environment the types of sound pressure levels and frequencies that the director and the composer want you to be able to hear in that home theater. It's not just in that big movie theater, but also in the home theater as well. Air Studios, these guys are Grammy and Oscar-winning recording engineers. They've done all the James Bond movies, all the Harry Potter films, all the Star Wars films. The master mixes were done there. For those of you that might be gamers, all the Xbox 360 surround mixes are done at Air Studios. These are just, go to their website, guys. It is literally an endless list of artists and directors and composers that I've worked with over the last 40-some years. It's insane. They actually have a page dedicated to their relationship with Pioneer. The Air Studios logo on a Pioneer product means Air Studios has been involved in the design since the prototype. It is a guarantee that some of the best ears in the world have approved the product. That's putting it mildly. Air's experience in surround film scoring and pure stereo music recording means we have some strong ideas about designing a home theater amplifier. People, think about this for a second. Pioneer, inside Air Studios, whenever they do a master mix for a James Bond movie or a Phil Collins CD or a Sting CD or an Xbox 360 game, before it goes back to Columbia TriStar, before it goes back to Atlantic Records or to Microsoft, they sit down with that artist or that composer or that director and have them listen to that master mix on a Pioneer Elite receiver, because they believe that of all of the different systems out there that can recreate sound in a widely different type of acoustic environment, one room to the next, Pioneer with their room tuning system, MCACC, does it the most accurately, the most correctly of all the different systems out there. That is a pretty strong statement. Pioneer is the only consumer electronics company in the world that has a relationship with a professional recording studio. Happens to be Air Studios. That's incredible. All these other companies out there, they have this huge disconnect, a chasm, if you will, between their professional and their consumer markets. They don't share ideas. They don't share discoveries or technologies back and forth. We do, because this is all we do. It's just audio and video. We know that we're recreating sound correctly because the people that are creating it, for crying out loud, are telling us whether we're doing it right or wrong. More importantly, if we're doing it wrong, so that we can fix it. Now, quickly from a CI standpoint, we do play nicely with all the big custom companies out there, Control4, Crestron, AMX, and so on. So pretty much whatever you guys happen to want to use or your control of choice out there, we will play nicely with it. Not to confuse things, but I'm going to confuse things anyway. Just on the entry-level Elite receiver, the VSX42 only, we have our control app, very stripped down, streamlined, gives you surround sound modes, input, output selections, volume control, things like that. Even a little bit of metadata feedback from your MP3s or your Pandora V-Tuner. This is a free app on the App Store for iTunes and the Google Play Store as well, too. When we go up from the VSX42, we have access to a much, much broader range of controls with iControl AV2012. For those of you that use RTI, we are the only company offering you this kind of user interface, which we developed exclusively with RTI. Complete visual, two-way metadata. This is the command I sent you. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm going to do. So really great feedback tool for you. Zone 2 subwoofer out. There are 2 for the main zone starting with the SC61 and 1 for the second zone. So a total of 3 sub outputs. Advanced PC setup for CI. This starts with the SC63. A number of other companies do this as well too. They give the ability to configure the receiver over IP, change the inputs, labels, 12-volt trigger control commands, things like that as well too. What we're doing a little bit differently than everybody else though in this regard is that all of this kind of reconfiguration setup is being stored on your laptop computer. It's not being stored in local memory on the receiver. So that if some point down the road, a week, a month, a year later, your client calls you up and says, hey, you know that manufacturer's remote control that you hid in the drawer and told me to never touch? Well, I've touched it. I wasn't using your ITI remote control that you programmed for me so nicely. I used the manufacturer's remote control. Now I've got picture but no sound. Come out and fix it. Well, you would. You would have to waste time getting in a car and driving 50, 75, 100 miles to go out and fix this simple problem by reinstalling the commands there at the receiver. Because on our system you're storing all these settings locally on your own laptop, wherever you have access to the internet, you now have access to that Pioneer Elite receiver. These receivers can be port forwarded outside of their home network firewall, just that receiver. So this is a great way of being able to save a lot of time and headaches for people out there that have accidentally messed up their system. On-screen display overlay, the SC65 on up, a lot of installations, receivers not in direct line of sight of the display. This is just going to give you a quick little, yes, I'm on the right input, yes, this is the surround sound mode I meant to select, here's my volume level. Disappears after about 5 seconds. Here's iControl AV 2012. Again, this is free. This is amazing. You guys need to try it out if you haven't. It's free. Download it on your Apple device, on your Android device. It's awesome. This is so much more ahead of the curve than anybody else's apps out there. It's got a demo mode. Try it out. It's incredible. This is very cool. I wanted to point this out in particular for you too. The finger EQ, part of the emphasis in our iControl AV 2012 app. If you have tuned your room, your home theater with the included microphone, there are still going to be audio sources that you're going to listen to that just don't sound very good because they weren't mastered very well to begin with. It could be an old recording, could be a new recording, they just don't sound that great. Well, in the past, you would have to go into the receiver settings and go into the EQ and change everything just to make that one recording sound better. And that would screw up all the other movies and CDs that you want to listen to. What Finger EQ will do for you is do a global overlay on the fly with the 9-band graphic EQ that you can put into memory and then kill it so that Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol sounds the way it should. But when you're watching something like an older movie like, say, Usual Suspects that doesn't sound very good, you can go in and reload on the fly your Finger EQ setting to make it sound better. And then when you go back to watch something else, kill it, and you're back to your previous settings. So it's a very, very cool little feature that we've got built in. Ease of use. Before and after room tuning results, zoomable, rotatable, expandable. Built-in QWERTY keyboard for relabeling your inputs. How cool is that? You don't have to use the remote control to go up and down, left and right, enter just to get to one single character to relabel your inputs. It doesn't just change it on the app, it changes it on the receiver as well too. There's two-way communication over your network. Advanced video adjustments too, depending on the receiver that you got, starting with the VSX60 on up, you can have anywhere up to 15 different audio and video, or in this case video parameter adjustments to really, really fine-tune your video source and your video display as well too. And that's all, again, built into the app. Sound Explorer, many more flexible options in controlling your sound modes than we had in the past. One of the interesting things about this app too is we have a lot of videos included with this app to explain, with a nice British accent no less, what these different audio modes are doing for you, like PQLS. What the heck is that? I may know what it is, but Joe Blow on the street doesn't know what it is. So here's a little video to explain to you, yes, this is how it works, this is what it's doing for you. It's not just a simple on or off where you hear a difference but don't know if that difference is good or bad. This is on the pioneerelectronics.com website. This is to give everybody beyond a shadow of doubt, going back 3 generations, which receiver works with which control app, because we've had, just like everything else out there, we've had different generations of the control app. So we want to make sure that people understand, hey, if I've got a receiver from 2010, which app will it work with? The #1 request from everybody was, please give me HDMI out to another zone. Please, 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 or we'll hurt you. Well, we took that message to heart. We were scared, so we gave you a HDMI discrete output to zone 4 on the SC67 and SC68. Again, this is discrete. It is a switcher, not a repeater. So we have a total of 3 HDMI outs, same audio and video to your main zone, and completely different HDMI source out to your 4th zone. We listened, we gave it to you. And of course, I know all of your home theater installations look like this. That's just your entry level, of course, and you're all playing Bette Midler. But this is, again, just a recap. I control AB2012 for zone control, subwoofer for your multiple zones, HDMI out for your other zones, PC setup, advanced installation features, third-party control. We don't sell it on the internet. If it's out there on the internet, we didn't authorize it, we're not going to support it, and we're going to shut down whoever was selling it on the internet. And Tom can get into that too. He loves to talk about that. Higher margin as well too. We really, really want to make sure that not just we are going to make money off your sales, but you're going to make some money off of it too. How are we doing on time?
You're doing good.
Okay. So just a few tips before I go and before we touch on Blu-ray players. This is something that's kind of hard to dig around the owner's manual and figure it out what's happening, but I get this call a lot, even to this day, is somebody's got some big floor standing left and right speakers and a subwoofer, and they want that subwoofer hopping across the floor 24/7. They want the subwoofer on. They've calibrated the system. It sounds great for movies, but when they're playing music, CD or what have you, that subwoofer's not coming on. They go into the menu and it says, I've detected a subwoofer. Well, why isn't it playing? In engineering speak, when it says yes, there's a subwoofer, that's just the engineer's way of saying, okay, receiver, when I hear a low frequency effects channel for a movie, I'm going to play the subwoofer. If you want the subwoofer on all the time, you have to set it to plus. Plus means it's on all the time. Same thing with the receiver's network standby mode. It is off. So if you have your receiver connected to the network and you're using RTI or Crestron or our own iControl AV2012 app, you can turn the receiver off, but you wouldn't be able to turn it back on again because the default mode is off. Why is it off? Well, because when it's on, it consumes a little bit more power in standby, and we're trying to be eco-friendly. So it is off out of the box. Go in, turn it on. I think it consumes like 0.3 extra watts of power in standby mode, something meaningless like that. But then you'll be able to turn the receiver back on. No problem with your third-party IP. Now, Tom asked me to touch on this really briefly because a lot of people don't really understand where it fits in the mix, because our receivers do a lot of the same things that these network streaming players do. And to be frank with you, when we got these from Japan, we all thought they were pretty cool internally, but we kind of were skeptical about Pioneer Japan's philosophy, which is this is for a dedicated 2-channel market. Now, some of you out there may have a dedicated 2-channel client base, but most people don't. So it's for the most people that don't, I want to address this too. You have this N30 or this N50, they look very similar, that really all they're designed to do is take audio off of the internet or off of your computer and play it through your nice big speakers or your bookshelf speakers. That's all they do. They don't have any internal memory of any sort like that. They have some very nice high-end processors to improve sound quality from digital audio sources. They're also AirPlay and HTC compliant as well too, so you can stream music wirelessly to them from your Apple device or your Android device. But aside from that, what good are they? Well, here is something that I think we can all agree is actually a pretty big positive for these devices, whether you're a 2-channel market person or not. Everybody here today has a client that they sold a receiver to a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. You've got that client list. You've got the copies of the receipts of what you sold them and stuck in their system. This is a customer that may not have the bank account available or the desire, frankly, to upgrade to the latest and greatest receiver or preamp. So maybe they don't have internet radio. Maybe they don't have AirPlay. Maybe they don't have the ability to stream the music that they've downloaded that's on iTunes in their library on their computer. Sir, ma'am, this is a great way to make your older legacy system shine in the modern world. This is a great add-on at a very reasonable price. You're looking at $400 and $700, I believe, are the price points on these guys. It's not $1,500. It's not $3,000 that they'd have to invest in a brand new receiver. This is a great add-on to give them all of the latest and greatest bells and whistles like AirPlay, which everybody is jumping up and down about. Everybody wants to have AirPlay. Hey, here it is. And not just AirPlay, but it'll also give you a great way to improve the quality of those AirPlay songs, make them sound a lot more like the original recordings that they were taken from. So that is our network streamers in a nutshell. Forget about 2-channel. This is a great add-on to older legacy systems. And again, we actually put stuff inside. The one on the right is a company that starts with a D, ends with an N. That is the same networking boards from their entry-level network receiver. That's it. And they're charging $200 more for that one. The one on the left is our N50, separate power supplies for analog and digital processing. All the boards and chips that were designed from the ground up just for this product. These are the step-ups. What's the difference? In red, between the N30 and the N50, higher quality DACs, including 32-bit conversion, auto level control, sound retriever, air for Bluetooth, if you so choose to use Bluetooth. There's a Bluetooth port on the back for an optional dongle. Auto sound retriever, DAC-only mode for coax and optical inputs. Pretty extensive there. Again, this was the N50 that was reviewed on audiostream.com and got compared very favorably to DACs costing 3 and 4 times as much. And finally, at the end here, the Blu-ray disc player. Look at that, it's a Blu-ray disc player. Woo, very exciting, not at all. But it is actually a very cool Blu-ray disc player. This is a little bit different from last year's BDP53 that it replaces. You can see it has dual HDMI outs just like the 53 had before. But unlike the 53, the 62 will allow you to send audio and video in any combination that you want to through either the main or the sub output. The 53 last year, you were limited to one or the other on the sub output. So it was either video or audio. It wasn't video and audio like off of your main output. Very, very fast response time in boot and tray eject and disk eject and so forth and playback. But this also has that HDC connect that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation to allow you to send wireless high-definition video and high-resolution photos. I wish I could show you this in person. It's very, very impressive. It's amazing how fast it just does what it's supposed to do. And like all the other Blu-ray players out there, DVD audio, video, Super Audio CD, Marvell QDO processing, Netflix, Pandora, YouTube, Picasa, blah, blah, blah. All the usual features that you would expect. Now, we don't have Vudu, we don't have Hulu, I'm sorry to say. The reason primarily being is that we are still at a fairly high price point. Now, granted, there are players by Oppo, which cost $100 more, like their new 103 model, that do have features like Vudu and Hulu built in, but the reasons they cost more have something to do with that is that they are spending more money on licensing fees without giving you any kind of improvements in audio and video playback. We're trying to give you the same levels of performance for audio and video that people have come to expect from Pioneer and not go completely crazy in the price point domain. Plus, with all of the network streaming boxes and TVs out there that people have today that already do, like Roku, have Hulu and Vudu and HBO Go and all those other network streaming features built in. We just decided that from a performance standpoint and a price point standpoint, we wanted to make sure that we look and sound as good as we possibly can at these price points. and that meant some sacrificing as far as the streaming services go. So that is that, and now we will go into Q&A.
I like that screen. Okay, this is Melanie. Thank you, Rolf, for the great presentation. We're going to go into our question and answer session. Rolf, I'm going to leave you unmuted, and Tom as well. For the rest of the attendees, if you have a question, please press that little hand to raise your hand to ask a question, and I'll unmute you, or type in a question and I will ask it on your behalf. I do have somebody who's disappointed that Pioneer is not selling big wheels. And after that, I do have a question. One of the dealers asked, can you program and set up speakers from iControl if your remote was lost? He was going to ask the second part of the question, but I think it cut him off. So his question is, can you program and set up speakers from iControl if your remote was lost?
From iControl, programming the speakers in terms of selecting which speakers you want to use, for example, A or B speakers?
Jeff, if you're still on the line, I just unmuted you if you wanted to ask the question.
Jeff, go ahead. Bueller?
He's there, but he's not on the telephone audio portion. He just has his speaker on his computer, so he might not be able to.
Okay, if that's the case, if you want to clarify it in writing and send it either to Tom or myself, and I'll give my email address at the end, then I can get a better handle on what it is exactly you're after and make sure that that gets addressed properly.
Okay, he did say yes to your question. Were you asking, did you specify?
A or B speakers?
About the iControl? Yeah, he said yes to that.
Okay, so no, not in that sense. Depending on the model receiver that's being used, you will have tone control for the speakers in a different zone, but not your A or B speakers. You have access to control your second, third, and even your fourth zones for your sources and your volume levels, but at this time not the distinction between A and a B speaker. Maybe with the next generation version I'll make a note of that and see if anybody's thought about that at the corporate level.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions? I don't see any hands raised.
I'm always looking for answers too. Okay.
Robert, I'm going to unmute you. Robert, are you there?
Go ahead if you can hear us.
Robert, you're only on through your computer, so there should be an audio pin at the bottom if you want to call in real quickly to access. Rolf, what I can do is send your information, your contact information, if that's okay, out to all who attended. And if they have a question, they can contact you.
All right, I'm sending that over right now.
And I'll send them your email number unless you've got that up.
Did you see that I sent that over in the chat?
Oh, got it. Okay, great. So anyone on the call, I will send Rolf's information to you if you'd like to reach out to him and have an unanswered question. Tom, that's you. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. Is that Melanie speaking?
Yes, that's me.
No, other than to say thank you for everyone that took the time to join us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you, Melanie.
Melanie